The most famous giant in biblical stories is Goliath. He was a fearsome warrior in the ranks of the Philistine forces, Goliath of Gath. He emerged from them about 10 feet tall, 1 Samuel 17.4. This measurement may seem unusual, as it uses cubits and spans instead of feet and inches. Emphasizing Goliath's extraordinary stature, imagine the tall figure he presented with his arms stretched above his head. His height was not the only intimidating aspect. He wore a heavy bronze helmet and was clad in a coat of scale armor, made of layers of metal plates, weighing over 56 kilograms. His ankles were protected by bronze greaves, and he carried a bronze javelin on his back. He beats the handle. The spear was as thick as a weaver's beam, and the tip weighed about 7 pounds, while the shield-bearer walked ahead of him. 1 Samuel 17.57. His armor resembled chainmail, and the Philistines usually wore a large, tent-like garment adorned with bronze rings from shoulder to knee for added protection against deadly weapons. Furthermore, Goliath had the advantage of a shield-bearer walking ahead of him. With a shield the size of a person, providing added defense against such a fully protected giant, anyone would have had a formidable challenge. Underscoring the imposing presence and preparedness of this legendary warrior, Goliath took his position and shouted to the Israelite army, "Why are you preparing for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and are you not Saul's subjects? Choose a man and let him fight with me. If he manages to defeat and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I defeat and kill him, then you will be our subjects." 1 Samuel 7:8-9. This was a typical approach in ancient Oriental societies, known as representative warfare, in which a fighter from each side fought to represent their armies. The winning side achieved victory, leaving the defeated side to submit completely. Goliath continued, "There is no need to send your entire army. Send just one man to fight me. As the winner, I have no rival." Goliath did not issue this challenge just once. He repeated it daily, for 40 consecutive days, twice a day, morning and evening. He would come forward first. Samuel 17:16. Constant reminder of his stature and power, challenging anyone in Israel to confront him. As the battle lines were drawn, David, a young shepherd in the Judean hills near Bethlehem, was tending his father's sheep. He was too young to join the army and likely had little knowledge of the ongoing conflict between the Israelites and the Philistines. He may not even have known who Goliath was. David's main concern at the time was the safety of his 3 older brothers who were fighting under King Saul. Worried about his sons on the front lines, Jesse, David's father, was unable to travel across the rugged terrain to see. He called David, his youngest son, and gave him a mission, saying, "David, I have a mission for you, Jesse." He then said, "Take this roasted grain and these 10 loaves of bread for your brothers and go quickly to their camp. Also, take these 10 pieces of cheese to their commander. Check on your brothers and come back with news about them." 1 Samuel chapter 17, verses 17 and 18. David got up early in the morning, left the sheep in the care of another shepherd, gathered supplies, and set out as his father had instructed. He arrived at the camp just as the army was preparing for battle. Their shouts filled the air. 1 Samuel 17.20. Upon arriving at the edge of the Israelite camp, David noticed the soldiers busying themselves and shouting battle cries, and his curiosity was piqued by the events unfolding. He hurried to the front line to meet his brothers, leaving the burden in the care of a baggage keeper. After handing over his provisions, his assigned keeper, David, quickly joined his brothers in the front line as they conversed. Goliath, the mighty champion of the Philistines of Gath, appeared and repeated the challenge. This time, David was there to hear it for himself. 1 Samuel 17:22-23. As David stood among his brothers, a loud shout echoed through the valley, causing a wave of panic. Instantly, the soldiers around him turned and fled, seeking refuge in their tents. The text describes the fear of the men of Israel when they saw Goliath as they fled in terror from his presence. 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 24. Up until this point, David had not known about Goliath's daily challenges. This was his first glimpse of the armored giant who openly defied the God of Israel.
David's anger flared up at the sight of this and the blasphemies of the giant. Seeing the fear of the Israelites and the formidable enemy, David asked those around him what would be done for the man who would kill this Philistine and remove this disgrace from Israel. Who is this Philistine? He is uncircumcised to mock the armies of the living God. The soldiers around him shared the king's promises with him for the one who would face Goliath. 1 Samuel 17:26-27. Motivated by what he had heard and guided by his faith, David requested an audience with King Saul. Standing before the king, David confidently declared that no one's heart should be afraid because of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him. Saul then said to David, "You are too young to fight this Philistine. He has been a warrior all his life, and you are only a boy." However, David replied, "I used to take care of my father's sheep. When a lion or a bear took 1,000 of the flock, I would go after it. I would strike it and save the lamb. If it turned against me, I would grab it by the beard. I would strike it again and kill it. I have killed lions and bears, and this Philistine will be the same, because he has defied the armies of the living God." David continued, "The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear, he will deliver me from this Philistine." Saul then blessed him, saying, "Go, and the Lord be with you." Saul tried to prepare David for battle. He put on his armor, put a bronze helmet on his head, and a coat of mail on his body. David then put Saul's sword over the armor and tried to go, but the unusual weight hindered him. David told Saul, "I can't fight like this. I'm not used to them." He took off his armor, picked up his shepherd's staff, chose 5 smooth stones from the brook, put them in his bag, and with his sling ready, he set out toward the Philistine. Here stood David, dressed in the simple clothes of a shepherd, armed only with his sling and staff, ready for the confrontation. At this crucial moment, the Philistine approached David with his shield-bearer. Walking forward, the Philistine saw David and taunted him for his youth and less than impressive appearance. He challenged David, saying, "Do you think I am a dog that you come to me with sticks?" Then he cursed David in the name of his Philistine gods. He also challenged him, saying, "Come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field." David responded boldly, "Do you come to me with sword, spear, and javelin? But I come in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. Today the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I will strike you down, cut off your head, and scatter the bodies of the Philistine armies on the field for the birds and the beasts to devour, so that all the world may recognize that Israel has a God." 1 Samuel 17:41, 1.46. While David, bold and determined, faced an imposing giant, having only a simple sling and a single stone against an enemy armed with equipment weighing over 90 kilograms, Goliath moved towards him to engage him in battle. David ran to the front line to meet him and, taking a stone from his bag, struck the giant squarely in the forehead. The stone sank deep into Goliath's forehead, and the giant fell face down. Thus, David defeated Goliath with only a sling and a stone, without using a sword. Then he ran and took the giant's sword with which he beheaded him. Seeing their champion defeated, the Philistines turned and fled. The Philistines did not reorganize. Discouraged by the loss of their titan, they scattered. Meanwhile, the Israelites and the men of Judah gathered with a battle cry. They pursued the Philistines as far as the mouth of the valley and the gates of the screen. The Philistines, who had been badly wounded, fell on their way through Kariman, reaching as far as the neck and the screen. After the pursuit, the Israelites turned to plunder the Philistine camp, taking the spoil of 1 Samuel 17:47-53. David presented the severed head of the Philistine to Jerusalem, took it into the city, and the Philistines' weapons, and stored them in his tent, according to 1 Samuel 17:54. The story of David and Goliath is a famous biblical narrative, depicting themes of courage, faith, and triumph over formidable obstacles.
Some scholars speculate that Goliath, a native of Gath and known as a Titanic guide, may have been a descendant of the Nephilim. However, other authors argue that he came from the line of their fame. Because the Nephilim were destroyed in the great flood of Noah's day, leaving only Noah's family. The Bible refers to fame almost 20 times, such as in Deuteronomy 2:1 and 20:22, Joshua 12, 4th Deuteronomy 3 and 11, and others. Og, king of Bashan, was the last of these giant kings. His iron bed measured 9 cubits in length, almost 3.6 meters, and 4 cubits in width, almost 1.8 meters, using the standard measurement of the cubit from the forearm to the tip of the middle finger. Accordingly, this country came under our control. At that time, we assigned the territory from Aron Air to the Arnon Valley, including half of the mountainous region of Gilead and its cities of Robin, to the Bits and Gadgets, and the rest of Gilead and all of Bashan. The kingdom of Og we assigned to half the tribe of Manasseh, encompassing the entire area of Argos, known as the Land of the Giants. Many experts believe that the Philistines, including figures such as Goliath, descended from a race called Anakim, particularly emphasizing the fact that Gad had once been an important stronghold of the Anarchs. Some researchers even propose that Goliath's lineage may demonstrate a genetic pattern of autosomal dominant inheritance, explaining conditions that lead to extraordinary height, such as familial acromegaly or gigantism. In biblical narratives, Goliath was a huge man. After the fall of his legendary brother, we find 4 brothers of Goliath. There was another war with the Philistines in the Gobi, and Anan, son of Iaru, Rim of Bethlehem, killed Goliath of Gath, whose spear had a handle like a weaver's beam. According to 2 Samuel 21:19, these imposing figures in their thousands, SF is Bible Nob, and the 4th unnamed, but remarkable for having 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, had a message to convey not only to their enemies, the Israelites, but also to themselves. Each carried weapons of incredible scale and power, though their names are not as famous as their brothers, the notorious Goliaths. Their existence tells a gripping story of overcoming obstacles, fighting for redemption, and the complex reality of living in the shadow of extraordinary achievements. After the defeat of Goliath by young David, who triumphed with only a sling and a stone, the Philistines once again faced the Israelites in battle. Among the Philistine forces was Bebe-Nob, a mighty warrior and relative of Goliath, as recounted in 2 Samuel 21:14 and 15. During this conflict, David and his men engaged the Philistines in battle, but fatigue overtook David. At that time, Bebe-Nob, who was fighting giants and was carrying a spear weighing 300 shekels of bronze, along with a newly made sword, he sought to kill David as David's forces weakened. "Are you a knob, baby?" He saw an opportunity to strike, but he failed to take into account divine intervention. which led to his downfall and that of his comrades. In that day, the opponents of God's followers often appear imposing, intelligent, and confident of their victory. However, no matter how strong they are, their cunning or self-confidence cannot overcome the power of God. At a critical, abysmal moment, he intervened to help David, saving him in a remarkable way, as described in 2 Samuel 21:18. Abigail, the eldest daughter of the god Hay, David's sister, and therefore Joab's brother. And so he ran to David and defeated the Philistine. Later, David's men pleaded with him, saying, "You must not join us in our battles, lest you put out the light of Israel," recognizing the essential role that David played in the nation. In an exemplary display of loyalty and courage, Avishai went with David on a daring expedition to Saul's camp, where they secretly stole the king's spear and water jug from near where he slept. When David was then challenged by the rebellion of his son, Absalom, he was given command of one of the 3 main divisions of David's troops. In addition, Avishai held a prominent role as the leader of the second of the 3 famous warriors, known as the Mari, as detailed in 2 Samuel 20 and 3:18, as the brother of Joab and the son of the Series. He distinguished himself among the 30, famously defeating 300 men single-handedly, thus securing his legendary status. This narrative emphasizes Abigail's bravery and deep devotion to her leader. However, it is also essential to recognize the divine timing and support that played fundamental roles, especially when David was in great need. The challenges may seem overwhelming, but those who stand up for a righteous cause and defend it with strength are never alone. Avishai exemplified this by standing firm, unwavering, even in the face of the greatest difficulties. He maintained his courage even at that critical moment. Divine help came, although the help came from a less experienced young man. David gratefully received this support. It is a reminder that even the most valuable can experience moments of vulnerability, but those who remain steadfast and fearless will be helped and will ultimately triumph. After an almost miraculous rescue, David's men decided that he should not be exposed to such great dangers anymore. They convinced him not to participate in direct battles with Absalom, although he continued to confront the Philistines until a consensus was reached. After almost losing him, all swore to him a covenant that David, considered the light and beacon of Israel, would never again undertake such dangerous deeds. It became imperative to protect essential persons. How was David for his people? With great vigilance and caution, on that day, Abigail's bravery was celebrated, thus ensuring that David would survive to lead in future conflicts. The battle with Bibi Noob and the subsequent encounters with giant descendants of the rain in Gat provide regenerative, enduring struggle between the Israelite and Philistine. The story reflects no physical warriors, the spiritual and emotional attitude. Israel victory, David vulnerability in Phase 3. B. Noble challenges remains the greatest leaders. Faces of witness, the times that support loyal companion. Avishai becomes crucial. Abyss, Ivory, and Swift intervention in the David continue, leading Israel a testament is loyalty, divine providence. Just right moment, similar the battle against the science regions of Enlami Echo International Conference on Goliath. This is formidable and strength over by Israel warriors, and the symbolism of the waves beam in the illustrated world. The power of the giant's weapons, emphasis, the contrast, the ordinary and the extraordinary, and that the Israel light makes. This extraordinary is not blue strength, along with divine intervention and strategic powers held Hanan victory over Lameh. In particular, when the wild David presents invaluable, Victoria is not relevant. Victoria of the warriors, Jackie and Hanan show that Israel's strength lay in unity and faith is not a notable leader. Continue highlight support and assistance. that David received from this is no longer. The giants raised up to continue with the man of the giant or his in the detail of battles. Further emphasizes the extraordinary nature of this is Jonathan David, NFC sleeping giant. Saint Gobain as legendary angel remains. That's the spirit of bravura and the divine protection that we, or obviously, David. Victoria family is appointment reminder to over the giants was not to David along with legacy passed through generations. This story is what the times of an intervention, loyalty, and powerful reminder to the Israelite and the readers. True strength does not come from physical might, and what is good, whether David, Abigail, Jackie Hannon, of Jonathan, the true victory through support and the rise of the people to remain faithful, in the other words. The Bible teaches a profound lesson through its story, a lesson in humility and quiet strength, qualities that eluded even the greatest of giants. The narrative specifically identifies these four figures as living, linking them to anarchists, as mentioned in Deuteronomy 2:11 and 21, suggesting a common bloodline between Goliath, his kinsman, and these ancient warriors. Despite their imposing stature and power, Goliath and his kinsmen failed to stand up to God's chosen ones, illustrating that true power lies not in physical strength, but in divine alignment. Each confrontation with these giants served to strengthen the faith of the Israelites, recalling David's proclamation, "The battle is the Lord's," before his victory over Goliath, as recorded in 1 Samuel 17:47. Thus, the stories of Goliath's brothers transcend their role as mere adversaries. They remain enduring symbols that show that even the most fearsome enemies succumb to the divine will. These giants are consistently depicted in biblical texts as enemies of God's people, ultimately defeated, embodying both a challenge and a test of faith for those who trust in God. The continued presence of Goliath's brothers in these narratives symbolizes the persistent obstacles that life throws our way. Just as David and his warriors faced numerous giants, we too are faced with ongoing challenges. The main lesson from these biblical episodes is the importance of resilience and constant vigilance, affirming the transformative power of faith and courage in overcoming adversity. Just as David defeated Goliath, subsequent victories over Goliath's brothers reinforce themes of faith and courage. Inspired by David's historic triumph, his warriors likely drew on the same wellspring of faith and courage to overcome formidable obstacles. David's lasting legacy lies not only in his personal achievements, but also in his ability to cultivate a resilient spirit among his people, preparing them for future victories. His successes were essential not only for his era, but also in empowering those who came after him, thus setting the stage for Solomon's later reign. The victories we achieve today are not just for our immediate needs. They lay the foundation for future generations. The enigmatic passage in Genesis 6:1-4 continues to fascinate Bible scholars and readers alike, touching on the mysterious figures of the sons of God and their Nephilim. According to Scripture, as humanity expanded and daughters were born, these sons of God found the daughters of men desirable and married them as they chose. The Lord then declared that his spirit would no longer strive with man forever, because man is mortal, setting their lifespan at 120 years. During this period, the Nephilim lived among men both before and after the sons of God married the daughters of men, producing offspring who became legendary heroes and men of renown of ancient times. Observing the widespread wickedness on earth, God noticed that the thoughts and intentions of men were consistently evil. This realization filled him with regret for the creation of man, causing him great sadness. As a result, God decided to wipe out not only man, but also all creatures on earth, from animals to birds of prey, because of his disappointment with his own creation. In the midst of this grim decree, Noah distinguished himself as an exception, finding grace in the eyes of God. The ungodly unions between the sons of God and the daughters of men, during a time of rapid population growth, aggravated by the extended lifespan of that era, contributed significantly to this divine displeasure. These verses indicate that these beings freely chose their wives from among humans. This episode is often interpreted as an evil scheme by Satan to disrupt human purity by sending his angels to mate with human women. He sought to corrupt the human gene pool. Such corruptions were seen as an attempt to prevent the birth of the Messiah, the prophesied Redeemer, by introducing a form of genetic contamination that would compromise the integrity of the human line designated to bear the seed of the woman. In Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, the text declares, "I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He will bruise your head, and you will bruise his heel." This implies that the Savior must be born of a woman who is not under the influence of demons. Therefore, if Satan could taint all of humanity, a Savior could not have appeared at this time. Satan almost succeeded. Human corruption had reached such heights that God decided to start over with Noah and his family. God also decided to imprison the demons responsible for this widespread corruption to prevent any further damage. He declared, "My spirit will not strive with man forever." This shows that God did not want us to be perpetually rebellious and stubborn. Obviously, our displacement from God had become so serious that a simple return to normalcy was no longer possible. God's tolerance has limits, and there comes a time when He declares that enough is enough. That is why we must embrace today, not some vague future, as the time to respond to Jesus' call. We have no assurance that God will continue to follow us beyond today, even though He has given us 120 years. It is noteworthy that the flood came exactly 120 years after this declaration. The narrative then introduces the existence of giants on Earth during that era. Born from unnatural unions between divine beings called the sons of God and human women, these giants were present both before and after the flood. The pre-flood ones were particularly infamous due to the demonic nature of their lineage, known as the mighty men of old.